Hello, my name is Jennifer Shlomovich, and I am a vegan confidence coach. I specialize in helping others confidently be themselves and provide support for vegans who live with non vegans navigate the challenges of having a lifestyle different from the people around them. Here on my channel, The Confident Vegan, I share content on Tuesdays for Topic Tuesday, where I interview guests and share other personal development topics. On Fridays, I have Food Friday, where I share recipes and other food-related content. Today, my special guest is Mayur Bhojane. Mayur is originally from India and moved to Edinburgh, Scotland 2 years ago. He is a software engineer and a part-time animal rights activist. He belongs to various vegan activist groups, including Anonymous for the Voiceless, Animal Save Scotland, We the Free, and Vegan Outreach Scotland. Mayur is here today to share his inspiring journey to veganism, which includes hosting the first fully vegan wedding in his town. Mayur, welcome.
Hi, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I'm really excited to have you share your story with my audience today. So thanks for stopping by. My first question that I want to ask you is, what is your vegan story?
Yeah, well, so till today, I had only small bit of my story because I just had that incident how I became vegan. But when I knew that I would be having chat with you, I just sat down and thought what could be my background story, because I felt that this couldn't be the only reason why I went vegan. So I just sat down and I thought like uh, somewhere the seeds were already planted in my head right from the childhood. So the story goes like when I was a child, like I was raised in a vegetarian family. My mom is very religious, so I fall under a section of Hinduism where we don't consume any flesh or egg, but we consume dairy. And for my father was in army, so he used to live in some different state for few of the years of my childhood, and it was only my mom who took care of me. So she taught me about the lessons of ahimsa, where she taught me I have to be kind to all the beings, and she didn't allow me to even kill the insects. So that kind of value she taught me when I was child. While growing up, when I was going to schools and colleges, I used to see people selling flesh on the streets, people eating eggs. Even my friends, they used to bring their tiffins, and which was having some flesh or maybe eggs. So this is how my learning was totally different from what I see in the society. And during my school holidays, I used to go to my village to see my grands, and there they had cow, um, and a calf was given a milk for some time. Then the calf was just tied on a rope, and the rest of the milk was given taken, and it was served in the family. So that kind of made me question, because I could see the mom wanting to go to the calf and calf wanted to go to the mom. uh, but that kind uh, so these questions, when I asked to my family and my relatives, they just gave me this answer that if the calf drinks whole milk, then uh, that calf will eventually die. So when you are a child, you just think whatever your family and society tells you, just believe it blindly. And at the same time, never knew how these calf, when they grow 1 or 2 years old, what happens to these calf. I never knew the answer for this. And also, when this cow no longer produces milk, what happens to these cows? So these kind of questions I never thought of, and I never, maybe when I just inquired about it, uh, so I was just told like these calf and the cow who is no longer produces milk is sold to some other farmer. That farmer will take care of these. So these were the kind of answers I was getting from the society and my family. So one of the incident which I remember, which really blew my mind, was castration of a bull. Uh, I was a child of, I think, 5 to 6 years old, and a few like group of people, they were holding bull, and so there was no anesthesia given to this bull before the castration process. And in village, just to make it very cost effective, they just use a huge stone and just crush the testicles of that bull. So after seeing that incident, that felt I felt very bad about what we are doing to these animals. Uh, then, uh, so these kind of stuff kept happening, and I just moved on to my life. So fast forward to 2013. So that was the first time when I heard the word vegan, because um, there were a few PETA activists who went on street to protest against the cruelty for happening to these animals. So that activism involved the activists going nude. So that was a big news on social media. So I just heard of it, and when I researched about it, I got to know that vegan is a community who doesn't consume any animal product, including dairy. So that was the first impression of me, that these vegan community don't consume any dairy, and I kind of appreciated that. And I felt like I have seen the calf gets milk, and the rest of the milk is taken by us. So didn't see any of the cruelty we do to these animals, at least in India. Uh, then it was, I think, 2017 and or 2018 somewhere. I have seen footages of how dairy industry runs, uh, and I think it was footage from a Dominion documentary, where they showed how the artificial insemination process happened to these cows, how the calf is separated. If it is a male calf, it is directly separated from the industry. If it is female calf, then she takes place of her mother, and just when she's used for her milk for 8 to 10 years, then she's just uh, taken to the slaughterhouse industry, slaughters, and that slaughter happens. So I gave up the commercial milk for almost 1 or 2 months, but I again to I just convinced myself that these things happen only in maybe Western countries, and that this doesn't happen in India. So I just switched back to all the dairy. It was not just not local farms; it was like even the commercial farms. I was consuming dairy. So when pandemic started in 2020, in uh, I was working from home, and one day I was just sitting for a lunch with my sister, and I remember that day, I think I was having cottage cheese in my uh, lunch. So my sister showed me a picture where a cow was tied, her legs were tied so closely that she couldn't move, and a guy was milking her. So that picture hit me so hard that I thought of giving all the dairy products, and I told my sister that I think I will go vegan from today. Uh, so this was the entire story. Post that, I got resistance from my family of me of regarding my decision to go vegan, because it's not very normal to do that, especially in India, because every meal has some milk product into it. But I still continue to believe that no, there is some cruelty even in India, because we are no one to just tie the legs of a cow and forcefully take a milk from her. So I, at this point, I didn't know I would be not consuming any of the dairy products, including chocolates or cheese. And I thought like this was the end. Maybe I will never be able to have these products. But when I researched about it, I saw many videos. So I think animal activist Arvind, he has posted many videos, and he was the first animal rights activist I have seen on YouTube, and I watched all of his videos, and I got enough knowledge, and I got to know like not only dairy, uh, vegans don't consume any honey, or they don't use any product which is made from um, animal skin. So I just added those to my list as well, and gradually I started to learn more. Even from health perspective, I got to know that even plant-based diet is very healthy for us. But again, these things were totally um, different compared to what uh, the reason I wanted to go vegan is for ethical reasons. But yeah, rest of the things is just a byproduct, which is very good in a way. So almost for a year or two, I had never seen a vegan in person, and I thought only community I can find is on social media, and that's it. So those social media friends were only friends I had that time. And when I got to move to Scotland in 2021, that was the first time I when I went to supermarket, I could see all of the plant-based option, right from mock meat, cheese, and vegan pizza. So I was very happy about it. But at the same time, I was just looking for joining any of the activism group here, because I knew for almost most of my life I did whatever I did was very cruel to animals. So in a way, I wanted to do something for them. Um, so I went to a short trip to London where there was a sweet shop, and I went inside. So the name of that shop started with something vegan, and when I went inside, I talked with the lady, and she told like she's vegan. So I almost like um, tears were rolling out of my eyes. So that was a very emotional moment for me, because I've seen for the first time vegan in person. Um, so post that, when I went back to Scotland, I uh, met many vegans who were activists, and then this is how I started my activism journey. And I think I'm just associated to almost 4 to 5 vegan activist group from Scotland, and every weekend I try to go to any of these activism events happening. Yeah, that's my vegan story.
Great. Thank you for sharing that with me. I can relate in a different way. Like, I for me it was how dairy was impacting how I felt. And I noticed that I was having like skin issues, and I was having sinus issues. And I didn't, we were used to eating a certain way based on how we grow up. We don't think about too much of our where our food comes from. Like, we know it comes from an animal, you know, and we know, with dairy there, I think there's a misconception that dairy is, harmless for the animal. There's
Yeah.
this whole other side to where dairy comes from that's torturous to the animals involved. And for me, it first started with food, and then it went, and then everything else was a byproduct. I was sensitive to dairy. I was looking up recipes on Pinterest, and I discovered all these dairy-free recipes that happened to be vegan, and the food was more exciting than the stuff I was making. Like, more creative, more healthy, and I did want to eat more healthy. And I think one of the challenges when you eat healthy, there's this misconception that if you eat healthy, you're going to be deprived of foods that you love. But with like especially whole food plant-based cooking, you can make all kinds of delicious desserts and dishes using plants, using vegetables and fruits in a really creative way, and seasonings. And so for me, it started with a food, and then I started watching documentaries. And that's where I started understanding more about bees and dairy. And even though I did eat meat and I knew where it came from, I didn't want to think too much about it, because, how we are raised, and it started making me think, like, I really want to be vegan. But I didn't, well, I knew my family didn't want to be vegan. I didn't have any close friends or family who were vegan, and I knew there was going to be judgment and questions and comments, and that was what scared me. And so little by little, I just started having fun and making recipes. and just doing that, making more vegetable stuff at home until the point where I was, I dabbled with being vegetarian and vegan for a little bit until I finally was ready to commit, because there was just something in my soul that was telling me to give up the animal products. And so it's interesting how a lot of other vegans I talk to, they either start ethical or they start for health, and then once they get started, all the other factors get supported. Like I do my best to not purchase anything made from animals, like purses and boots. Like I research, vegan leather products now, because I'm not comfortable using
Wearing
things that
someone's
involve
skin.
the suffering of another animal. And so I appreciate you sharing your story on all of that, because it's, I think it's important for other people to hear the journey of other takes. I think there's a lot of relatable commonalities that those of us who do become vegan, we all started with in a similar place, that and then gradually became more. Um, and before, I have some other questions I wanted to ask you, but you
Yeah.
did share with me when we spoke a few weeks ago that you had a vegan wedding, and it was
Mhm.
the first fully vegan wedding in your town. Can you share a little bit about that story? Because I feel like it's it highlights how, if you really want something, if something's really important to you, you'll
Mhm.
find a way to make it. So I think this story
Yeah.
is really great for that.
Yeah. So when me and my wife decided to get married, um, so we were very like firm on having a vegan wedding because even she's vegan. So and in India generally we host a very big fat weddings because it's like 4 days of ceremony and almost uh, 500 to 700 people come on the wedding day. Same number of people come on reception, and rest of the days of the ceremony almost like 100 to 200 people turn up. So hosting food for these people coming for the wedding is was one of the challenge, because uh, even though in India, and especially the part where I come from, the curries are made from with oil, but the sweet was a difficult like it was a challenge for us to make the sweets in a vegan version. But we just researched it and we just talked to the catering guys, and they helped us to get proper menu of how the things can be made in a plant-based version, because for them also it was very new thing, because no one has ever asked them to uh, prepare some sweets out of some other ingredients which was not involving any butter or cream. But in a way, the catering guys supported us a lot and they knew what we required. um, Second challenge was the costume. So generally when you are a groom or a bride, that time you opt for expensive clothes, and all of the expensive clothes has some silk or wool into it. Like if I was looking for a suit that has some wool into it, so I had to do some research to find uh, a match where I could get a good looking suit which doesn't have any wool, or any of the costumes which doesn't have silk into it. So we spent quite a lot of time in doing this research, and we finally got it, our costumes done. uh, and third was when it comes to rituals. So many of the rituals, like one of the ritual which happens just before a wedding day is when a groom rides a horse. uh, so that is a real horse and I don't wanted to use any horse, so I just uh, talked with my family and friends what could be the better option to do this. Then we hired a chariot which was having artificial horses, and it was having wheels, and it was looking kind of good, and because that had lights into it and a guy was riding it, so it was good. So whatever we changes we made, I don't think so that's a very difficult ones to do. It was just slight changes we made it, and it was all vegan wedding. And the review what we got after people eating the food or whatever arrangements we made, they really loved the food, and they really appreciated what we guys decided. uh, and I found like there was no issues in any of the ceremonies, because all we just did had every substitute for whatever was being asked for these rituals. So I think it went good. And hosting a vegan wedding, especially in India, is very easy because most of the food is by default vegan. So it was good.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. And I feel like, like a lot of the weddings like here, like, a standard wedding is like a 1 day thing. So
Mhm.
for to create something that's a few days and to make all of those different components come together, and you found a way to do it. And I feel
Mhm.
like that's just such a great story that shows, like, with proper planning and communication. I know, like, I've heard of, like a lot of chefs, like in restaurants, for example.
Mhm.
If you go to a restaurant that doesn't necessarily have a vegan menu,
Mhm.
but you say to the waiter, is there something the chef can create for me? A lot of chefs actually like that challenge.
Yeah.
And they like to make something creative. And then it also helps that place think about putting a vegan option or a few vegan
Mhm.
options on their
Yeah.
menu, because they may not realize they need to create it
Mhm.
until someone brings it up. So I think,
Yeah.
it sounds like you set a great example, and you showed caterers that, yeah, hey, there is a need for something like this.
Yeah.
Great. So what do you find most rewarding about being a vegan?
Well, so when I see my 27 years of life compared to last 3 years of life, I see so much of differences to any belief system or any issues in the world. I see I have a different perspective now. I never I'm always grounded these days. Like, I never jump to a conclusion, because I know I was doing something wrong for most of my life. There could be some issues which I still don't know, and I'm still doing it wrong. So I'm always conscious now for any move I make or any decisions I make in life. Uh, Second thing is, I feel very responsible now, because whatever work I'm doing, it's for someone uh, who can't speak for themselves, because this is the only justice movement where the victims cannot speak for themselves. And that that is kind of, that makes me think of, uh, hold that responsibility of speaking on their behalf. um, yeah, I think that's the thing. Like, whatever I see now is little different compared to what I used to see before. And I think I've got a better purpose in life to help educate people, let the truth be out, and communicate with friends and families, and let them know that this is not something which is very right. And yeah, I
Yeah,
think this is something which is, I feel like, has changed my life. And I think I uh, it's very rewarding thing for me.
that's great. Yeah, it's interesting. I can relate to, it's made me more intentional about the things I do and say, things I purchase. I think more about where my food comes from, how other things are impacted in general on the planet. And I've spoken to other vegans too who've said the same thing, where when they started becoming vegan, it changed how they saw things, and just in other ways, and how they respond to things. So yeah, I would say being vegan has also made me more intentional, and think a little bit more about how things are connected, and just the whole process for how something I do could impact somebody else.
Yeah.
Um, and then what do you find the most challenging about being vegan?
So just living in this non-vegan world, uh, where you see dead bodies in the supermarket, and the milk which was supposed to be fed to the baby cows, it is just packed in bottles and kept in this shelf of supermarkets. So that really pisses me off. And also when uh, I see my friends and family, they're still not vegan. Apart from one of my cousin, he went vegan. uh, so he's just 15 years old, and when I told him about the this cruel aspect of dairy, he was vegetarian already, but when I told him, he just went vegan overnight. But that is not the case with everybody. I still try to talk with my friends and family and let them know the truth, but still they are not ready to accept that yet. Maybe I'm very positive about it, but still. So when I sit with uh, I sit for any lunch or dinner in my office or so, then I see people having some food which is having some body parts into it. I i really feel like, even though there is so much of resource out there, uh, and even there are studies which shows plant-based diet is the most beneficial diet for your health. It's good for your environment, and these studies are out there. And if someone just puts some efforts to know this, it's so easy, and the truth is so evident. You can just see the pain in the animal's eyes. And still, if people cannot relate, if they cannot put themselves in the victim's position, I think that's a very challenging thing for me right now.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard when in general people have a different lifestyle that goes against our beliefs and values. And so it's finding a way to be able to share space with other people and what they believe in doing. Or again, some I think it's uncomfortable for some people to think about and change, right? Change can be very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
especially a big change in your diet. And again, veganism goes beyond the diet when you start incorporating other products, and that can impact your interactions with family and friends and your social circles. And what tips do you have that you would like to share that could help vegans out there interact with their family and friends who aren't vegan?
um, I think that's a very difficult thing to do, especially convincing your friends and family, because they have seen you from your childhood. And if you tell that something they've been doing, and even you are doing the same thing, and you tell them that that is wrong, then the acceptance is very low. But I would just say, like, you don't have to stop. You have to be positive. You have to just keep talking about this stuff. Maybe they would change. It's not same for everybody. Some people take time. Some just uh, it's just because of the disconnect they're having with the animals right now. And once that connection is established, I think it's very easy. So my suggestion would be, just keep trying. Just just be honest. Tell them the truth. If you are not comfortable eating food with them, just tell them. Or if you feel something they're doing wrong, just tell them. And also, I feel you don't have to be stuck in uh, just convincing your family and friends. You can just go out and do some activism. Tell someone who who is willing to listen to you. Tell them the truth about all the meat, dairy, and egg industry. So maybe you're not able to convince your friends and family, you can convince someone else's friends and family. So I think that kind of really helped me in uh, becoming an activist, because when I speak to people who are very open, who wanted to know the reality, but they were just not. They have never seen the reality, what goes behind them, and it gives me a kind of satisfaction that even though I couldn't convince my friends and family, I can just convince someone who was willing to know all of these stuff. So yeah, let's you have to keep convincing your friends and family. Just talk with them. That's the best way.
Yeah, I think to add to that, for me, it's been being the example. You know, what they're doing is what they're doing, and I'm gonna still do what feels right to me. And you know, I have a household with non-vegans, and because I've become vegan, we even though there are non-vegan products that come into this house, we have very minimal. We've reduced it a lot.
Mhm.
And so for me, I feel really good about that.
Yeah.
And change does take time. Like it took me a few years to commit to being vegan
Mhm.
until I just felt within me, my complete being, that I just couldn't have another animal product. And it takes time. And I think being that example and communicating your boundaries, you know, what are you willing to accept and not accept, and then focusing on the things that you have control over. And so it sounds like the activism is like that outlet where you can educate people.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that's the important thing, is being the example and educating others. So maybe they may not change today, but maybe something you said to someone at an activism event, maybe that'll stick with them. It'll start planting that seed where they're going to start thinking about things differently. And that I think is a beautiful thing, is, you know, just focusing on the things we have control over, and finding ways that, you know, we can interact with our friends and family, but also what can we do to have that impact for change. And so for me, it's this channel
Yeah.
and creating a supportive community for vegans and inspiring vegans, because
Yeah.
support is so important. Because when
Yeah.
you change your lifestyle, especially to veganism, it can be a lonely world sometimes. And so for me, my way of providing impact is sharing recipes and information and powerful interviews with guests like you, who share their stories and their experiences. And by doing all these different things, it starts the change. And I mean, look how much change has already happened over the years. Like, there's so much out there now for vegans that wasn't out there 15, 20 years ago. And there's so many companies. So there's already so much great change and impact that's happening. And so my hope is, by the work that people like us are doing, it'll help spread that more and build
Yeah.
on that. So, and what is there anything else that you wanted to touch on about the vegan activism work that you do before we wrap up?
Yeah. So the thing which you mentioned about you doing your kind of activism, like you host the interviews, and then you share the recipes on Fridays. So I think these kind of different uh, activists coming with their own skill set and putting it in front of people who need it. So I think that creates that environment. So the kind of activism right now I do is I go to all of these organizations. So one of them is Anonymous for the Voiceless. So you might have seen activists with some mask and holding the TV screens. So basic idea is like we want people to see the truth. So we just show the footages of how animal agriculture happens, and we show the footages of how these animals are slaughtered. And so if someone sees that footages and is willing to talk, then one of the activists could just go to him and just talk about what we are trying to show them. And it's mostly we just uh, try to divert our conversation for towards animal rights. So this is one of the kind of activism. On similar lines, we have We the Free, where we ask people to take a challenge for 3 minutes. So a person has to watch a 3 minute video um, for winning a prize. So once a person watches that entire video for 3 minutes, he is completely engaged in seeing that particular footages of how animals are treated in animal industry. And once people just removes their headphones, and when they talk with any of the activists, the emotion that comes out is very shocking. And they most of the time they say like, we have never seen these footages and thanks for showing us. And if they have any questions after that, how to go vegan, then we just guide them after that. Another kind of activism we do is Vegan Outreach Scotland, where which holds so we have a stall where vegan food is kept, and people just come to taste the vegan food, and then we have a conversation. So that these conversation is very holistic one, because it's not restricted to animal rights, but if a person is willing to know how his health is going to change, or what these if they change their habits of food or their clothing, how the environments is going to impact, how that will reduce the environmental damage. So we talk about all the aspects, whatever questions they have, we just talk about it. So that is one thing. And we also go to vigils. So these vigils happens outside of the slaughterhouses. So we
Mm.
just go to any of these slaughterhouses, and we see every 15 minutes a huge truck loaded with animals goes into that slaughterhouse. So be it sheep or pigs or cows. So when these animals go to the slaughterhouses, we just stand near gate and we just take the videos and photos of these animals, and we share it on the social media, so that uh, the audience on the social media have that awareness that these are were the animals, these are the sentient beings who will be slaughtered in few minutes of time. So different kind of activism work for different people. Sometimes people go vegan for their health reasons, sometimes people go for environmental reasons, sometimes they go for ethical reasons, but ultimately they are just reaching to uh, they are just not harming animals anymore. And I just uh, personally I feel like if you go vegan for ethical reasons, that is, you cannot, you never tend to go back, because some if you are a vegan for health reasons, then maybe if something goes bad in your health, you just switch back to eating meat and consuming dairy. But at the same time, it doesn't work for everybody. If everybody has their own reasons to go vegan, and that's the reason we have different organizations catering to all of these people who want to go vegan. So yeah, so I feel like I just go to all of these activism events. And recently we made a group in Edinburgh where we activists just meet every once in a month, and we discuss about any activism events we can just plan to do apart from all of these already existing organizations. And we also come up we also do socialize after this. Like you mentioned, you have your channel supports this as well, and you're planning to create that safe space for people. So similarly, we have a meeting where people who are vegan and they have so much to tell, but they don't have support from their families. So we have created one space where people can just tell about their stories. So this happens mostly, we are trying to do it every month now. So we have just created this group called Vegan Activist Forum, where we host all of these events. And this is like, uh, anybody has any idea, they just pitch in and they just tell that we can do this same thing in a better way. And it's like we activists just upgrade ourselves. be it from knowledge standpoint or what better we can do in terms of activism. So I think these are all the organizations I'm associated with right now.
That's great. And yeah, and you're right. There's so many different reasons people want to be activists and in the vegan movement. And there's so many ways that there's so many options out there that somebody can find something that works for them. And it's great that you're a part of these different communities that create that awareness and support other vegans in different ways. Yeah, it's really important work. Before we wrap up, and thank you again for coming here today to share your story and share just all the information that you've shared. Are there any other resources you would like to share with people watching to check out that can support them in their vegan journey?
Yeah, definitely. If you are like, if anybody is watching this is from India, they should definitely look out for a documentary film called Maa Ka Doodh, which talks about the dairy industry in India. And like any of the vegan documentaries like Seaspiracy, Dominion, or What the Health. So these are the one I would suggest people to watch.
Great. Yeah. I watched the first vegan documentary I watched was Vegucated. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, where they took it was a group of young people in their who lived in New York City,
Mhm.
and I think it was for like a month. I can't remember for how long. I watched it a long time ago, but they were partnered with somebody to go on this experiment of being vegan and also seeing videos on what happens in the slaughterhouse, like being educated
Mhm.
in all the different aspects of it. And so that movie really like sat with me. And I think that was part of my inspiration it was definitely part of that inspiration of helping me really commit, not just for the health reasons, but for
Yeah,
the ethical reasons. So yeah, it's great to. They're hard to watch,
yeah,
but I think it's so important that we educate ourselves and know what's
and
happening
yeah, and know the truth.
and know the truth, right? And sometimes the truth is hard, right? The truth can
Yeah,
be
yeah,
painful, but in anything in life, if we avoid the truth, it creates more pain because whatever it could be, it's better to acknowledge something at the beginning instead of
yes.
ignoring the truth about something, because then we can make change and create impact. um, well, thanks again for coming here. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
I'm active on Instagram and Facebook,
Okay.
and I can just share my email ID as well if someone wants to connect with me, if
Okay.
they have any questions, if they want to, if they are from Scotland and they want to join any of the activism groups, then I can help with them. I'll help them with whatever they want in terms of which group they want to join. So yeah, um, Instagram and Facebook mostly.
Okay, great. Can you send me those links and I can put them in the notes
Sure.
below this video? And I'll also include links to the documentaries that we talked about.
Mhm.
This way, if you want to check any of that out, you can go check out the notes below. All right, Mayur, it was really great having you here today to have this conversation with me. And thank you everyone for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Bye.